Carr here with the Limerick Post Show, and today I am joined by Laura Sherry, who is the Head of Marketing and Communications at Repak. How are you keeping, Laura?
Hi, how are you?
Thanks for being here today. I know you're very busy, so it's great to have you on to chat.
No problem. Thanks for having us. We're delighted to come on board.
So to get started, I suppose, do you want to tell us a bit about Repak and what it is that you guys do, for those who don't know?
So Repak is an environmental not-for-profit organisation with a social mission. Really our purpose on behalf of our members is to lead the recycling and sustainability of Ireland's packaging waste. We also want to advocate for a new circular economy and educate businesses and consumers about recycling and recycling packaging waste. We were set up in 1997, so we've been in operation over 20 years. And in that time, we have been given recycling packaging targets set by the EU and by Ireland, and we've achieved and surpassed all of those targets on behalf of our members and Ireland Inc.
That's amazing. So I suppose now that more than ever, it's really important that everyone becomes educated on waste production in Ireland, especially, you know, as we're approaching those EU targets for 2030, which is, if correct me if I'm wrong, it's 55% recycling package to be by 2030. So do you want to tell us a bit about Repak's plastic strategy for 2030 in terms of those goals?
Well, there's targets set for 2025 and 2030. So plastic, it actually is one of the most ambitious recycling targets that we have set in front of us. All the other targets that are set across, you know, glass, aluminium, cardboard and paper, you know, we have achieved and surpassed all of them, including plastic. But as you said there, plastic, the new targets set for plastic by 2025 and 2030 are the most ambitious targets. So we have a roadmap and a plastic strategy. We're working closely with our members on an initiative called the Plastic Pledge Initiative to try and encourage them to recycle as much plastic as they can, to reduce the plastic you know, on their materials, and working with the public to educate them and businesses to educate them about, to encourage them to recycle as much plastic as we can to hopefully help us achieve reaching those targets, the plastic targets. But yeah, they're ambitious targets that are set for Ireland, you know, and across the whole of the EU, you know, all of the EU states, member states have plastic recycling targets as well as other targets across materials. And, you know, every member state is looking at plastics because everyone knows that they are ambitious and, you know, they'll be hard to achieve.
So I suppose looking at Irish companies and larger corporations, where do you think that they're doing well and what do you think they can improve upon for reaching those targets?
Well, see, they reach the targets through Repak. So if they're members of Repak, so Irish companies and Irish businesses, by being a member of Repak, we ensure that they reach, that Ireland Inc. reaches its packaging recycling targets, if that makes sense. So, you know, they're fulfilling their legal obligation and their corporate social responsibility by being members of Repak, and through Repak, we ensure that they reach the targets that are set for their packaging. Okay,
yeah. I don't know if you saw as well, in terms of like conversation around plastic production and waste, there was that series on Netflix called Seaspiracy.
I watched it, yeah.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? I think it highlights for everyone just what, like, the impact that global plastic and waste production or generation is having on like an international scale. So it's not just like a problem for Ireland, it's a problem for every country really. And I think now with the pandemic as well, it's probably become more of an issue. How do you think the pandemic has affected packaging waste generation in Ireland?
So just to, you know, reference your first point about Seaspiracy, what they do talk about in the documentary is they focus quite heavily on fishing nets, the plastic fishing nets, and just so you know, you're aware and your viewers are aware that fishing nets are not actually packaging. So under Repak's remit, Repak is packaging only. So that's, so, you know, I think it was up to 50% of what's found in the sea is fishing nets, which, as I said, is not packaging. But you know, at the start, it did show, and we have seen, you know, the photographs around the world of rivers with plastic floating through it. So we know it's, you know, it's not, it isn't good. You know, we are aware of it. So, you know, I think all, like, as there's been huge targets, as I said, set by the EU, and there's a single-use plastic directive, there's waste action plan with the government. So everyone's really working together, you know, all key stakeholders across Europe, and you know, filtering into the different countries are all working together to try and, you know, reach plastic targets. People know, you know, we know it's you know, it is a problem. What I would say is, I wouldn't blame plastic. I think people have a lot, you know, they tend to think that plastic is really bad, but it's not plastic that's the enemy. You know, it's what people actually do with it. So, you know, when you see these images of rivers with, you know, plastic floating down the rivers, who put the plastic there? It's human behavior. It's the humans that have put it there. So what I would say and encourage people is, you know, recycle your plastic. You know, if you really just took that small initiative just to, you know, pop it into your recycling bin, it will be, you know, made into another resource. And that's what we're trying to live in a circular economy where, you know, the resources are kept in the loop, you know, rather than going outside the loop. So if you put it into your recycling bin, you know, that's one step to just helping the environment and helping us reach our recycling targets.
Yeah, I think that's what you're saying there about the confusion around recycling. It's not so much the plastic that is the issue, but I think people get very confused or nervous about what goes into what bin, and maybe a lot of misinformation about, you know, how to recycle well, what kinds of plastics go into what kinds of bin, that kind of thing. So what would be your advice to people in a community, tips, I suppose, for reducing plastic waste at home or efficiently recycling their waste?
So what we have seen since the start of the pandemic actually is that, you know, so people have moved from working, you know, in the workplace, you know, they're not in offices anymore, they're more in the household, and we've seen an improvement in people's behaviours with their recycling at home. So we say contamination, it's still a problem in the recycling bin, you know, people putting the wrong things into the recycling bin, but it's becoming, people are improving, you know, the contamination is reducing a little bit because they are at home, they're probably, you know, being more mindful about what they're putting into their bins because it's in their own home maybe rather than the workplace. So we have seen the quality of the material improve, which is brilliant. And, you know, what we would say is our mantra is clean, dry and loose. So have your materials, when you're putting them into the recycling bin, make sure that they're clean, you know, that they're not contaminated by other materials like food or liquids, that they're dry. So back to liquids, you know, that you don't throw an empty can of Coke that's kind of a good bit of Coke towards the end, or milk bottles into the recycling bin. Make sure that they're empty. And so clean, dry and loose. Make sure that your packaging is loose. So don't put it into a bag and tie the bag and put it into your recycling bin. Don't put it into, you know, your cornflakes boxes or your cereal boxes and shove it all down and put it into the recycling bin. You know, a lot of people might think you're actually doing the right thing and it's only really small, but actually you're not. So keep it loose. So clean, dry and loose. And then, you know, if you're unsure about what materials can go into the bin or not, you know, check repak.ie with a full list of, you know what to recycle, and you know, lots of information there, tips about recycling.
Great. And how much, I suppose, just so that people know, like, how much of an impact does contamination have? So recycling, putting things into the wrong bin, maybe how much, like, what's the process then of things that go into the wrong waste?
So, you know, contamination in some bins, it depends on the area, whether it's regional or urban, but it can be up to, you know, as high as maybe 35% in some areas of recycling bins, which is huge. So, you know, you've a lot of people who've done a really good job and cleaning, you know, making sure all their materials are segregated and put into the right place. And then you might have other households, just say, who aren't doing the right thing, and then that contaminates, you know, a load of recycling. So it really, what happens is, and I don't know whether a lot of people know this, but when the recycling is picked up outside everyone's homes or on the commercial side, outside, you know, commercial premises, it's brought to a recycling facility centre. And when it's brought into the centre, it's picked up and put onto a picking line. That's what we call it. A picking line is the first part of the process. And at that picking line, it's humans that go through all of the rubbish to take out the contaminants. So you have to remember, if you're throwing crap into your recycling bin, you have humans picking it out. So it's really unfair. You have to be really mindful that, like, there's actually other people at the end of it, and, you know, going through your rubbish to make sure that, you know, at the start of the line, whatever is taken out that's contaminated and that's nappies. Nappies is a huge one. Like a lot of people put nappies into recycling bins. So really, you don't want other people going through your crap. Essentially, try and have it clean, dry, and loose, and quality material. But that's really what happens. It goes to the recycling centres, and any contaminants that are taken out at the start are taken out. But if material is badly contaminated, it won't get recycled. It won't be kept in the loop. That's against living in a circular economy. We want to try and keep things within the loop and live in a circular economy, rather than them going outside of the loop, and contamination really, that does affect us.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Well, listen, Laura, I won't keep you any longer because I know you're very busy, but I think that was really good information to have. A lot of stuff that people probably wouldn't know anyway about waste production and how to improve. So thank you again for coming on. It's great to talk to you.
No problem. Thanks, Sarah.
Bye.